Hello and welcome to We're So Bloody Early. My name is Jake. I'm 33 years old. I'm a husband and a recent dad. This show is going to be a focus on Bitcoin and how our journeys to this amazing new asset class has affected our lives. I personally have been lucky to work as a broker through my life, an investor, and a couple of failed startups behind me. I'm very excited to start this new project. And these are my two great co-hosts, Matty and Jigs.
Hi guys, I'm Matt. I'm a 35-year-old father and husband, massive lover of sport. I'm an aerospace engineer come entrepreneur. I've been running my own engineering consultancy now for 5 years. I have a diverse range of skills across multiple industry sectors, and that's now led me to my new love, Bitcoin.
And I'm Jigs, 41 years of age, husband, father of three. Worked in the cash and transit industry for 20 years in a labor-intensive job. Recently retired for about a year now. I'm a stay-home dad and a hybrid trader.
Together we're the co-hosts of the We're So Bloody Early show. In the future, you'll expect to hear from some special guests that we get along to talk through their experiences. Hopefully we'll be creating some educational content that brings our friends and family along on this journey as well. And we hope you enjoy. Always reach out if you have any questions whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Max Kaiser was asked in a recent interview that every person that he has spoken to that has come in from where we've come and come in thought it was a scam. But everyone who's done the research, no one has turned around and goes, it's a scam. Like everyone who's done the research has come away thinking, I had it wrong. This is something. I mean, you look at Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio thought, nah, it's a scam, and then did the research and came back and went, I think I've missed something. That's huge for someone who's one of the best investors in the world.
So, and this is one of the points of doing this, isn't it, in terms of why we're getting together and trying to create a podcast, is the amount of incredible content out there that you can get your hands on, listen to, and do your own research, as Matty's quite rightly saying, is unbelievable. But to go back to something we asked earlier, the user growth statistics of Bitcoin are mind-blowing. So I did a period of my life, I did some angel investment. So the whole process was you were looking for startups that had some kind of competitive edge, that were at a certain stage in their growth cycle, that meant you could buy very cheap equity at high risk and follow on for a couple of rounds extra to avoid your equity stake diluting as the company needed more cash to grow. And there's a great investment phrase for that type of investing that's called, you want to invest in lines, not dots. And so a dot might be an initial piece of analysis of a startup company where you see the founder, it's got a couple of employees, you see what has been achieved so far in terms of the product, and you do your analysis on the market opportunity. And you might then see that same company 6 months later and they go, oh, do you know what? This company is clearly progressing really fast. And so you can draw two dots on a graph that suddenly become a line. And then you can look at maybe 10 companies and you can put them in dots, and then it's quite arbitrary macro level stuff, but you get the point, right? So if you invest in the fastest progress, the chances of you making a 100x return is higher through that company. Bitcoin, through that lens, is the most extraordinary investment I've ever looked at. So not only from a user growth perspective, can you calculate today that we're only 2% of total addressable market, in terms of roughly there are enough Bitcoin wallets for 2% of the global population. Now, it's not the case that every baby is going to have a Bitcoin wallet, right? But 98% of the world doesn't own this stuff. That is insane. Yet the people that do own it see it as value. Why is that? So not only have you got potentially a huge user growth curve to increase value through as an investor, you also have multiple different use cases of the asset. So if you were looking at just user growth, you've got two dots. Wow, look at the potential from your total addressable market perspective. But also it's like, is it a store of value? Well, yes, it's doing that. Is it a potential day-to-day currency or a network? Well, yes, it's actually doing that. In fact, you know, when you look at something like Uber, for example, no one understood when Uber first started that, you know, the taxi market is X. We're going to disrupt the taxi market. What they didn't realize is that actually everyone with a fucking car that wasn't being used, was sitting on the driveway at home, was potentially a potential taxi. And the actual total addressable market of that company versus its pitch deck, when some people invested, you know, 100 grand for 10% of the company, is completely different. So we know that 98% more people could actually use Bitcoin, which is already incredible. But the different use cases and value propositions that the system and network itself has, we still don't understand them all, which make it even more exciting as a potential upside.
I was going to touch on that, Jigs. Am I correct in saying this? Was it Michael Saylor that gave, it was a really good analogy. He, quote unquote, and I'll just touch on one phrase that really resonated with me was, we all, so referencing, say, my parents, and I still remember this, and the generations prior, to get from point, you talk about points, Jay, from point A to B, you needed a roadmap, a physical, hard roadmap in your car, sat in your glove box, that you used to have to read, and someone would act as a navigator in your front seat. And if you didn't have that, you'd be stopping 2 or 3 times to get to places that you weren't familiar with. Those no longer exist. I mean, there's no one that drives around with a physical roadmap in their car. There's a high percentage, you know, let's say, I can't blame the stat because I'd be wrong, but a high percentage of people, if not all the people that have modern cars, if they don't have a car that has an inbuilt navigation system in, well,
they use a phone.
They use a phone. So if they have a phone, they can use a relevant application. As you're saying, the adoption of whether it be an Uber would have been foreign to people that only knew taxis. People that use maps in the way that we use them today, be it on inbuilt navigation systems or cars and apps. Try and tell my granddad 30 years ago or 20 years ago, you know what, probably even 25 years ago is probably realistic, that you're going to have something in your car that's a screen that shows you how to drive to a place, or you have this little device in your hand that you can put safely into blah, 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 and that will show you how to drive somewhere. It just blows your mind. Like, there's been so many examples of progression in society, and for me, Bitcoin is the financial progression. You know, it is so overwhelmingly obvious, and the adoption rate for me is, we have some references now of points, and those points have the potential to be anything, and I think it will be.
Yeah, I agree.
It's quite crazy, isn't it? So what are some of the most resonating characters or content that you might recommend to people that are reading about Bitcoin for the first time that you guys have in the last, you know, let's say 2-year period? So we've now, you know, got through our 20s and now in our 30s, very much looking at today's world. What were some of the like most key moments that tipped you over the edge to go, actually, this is something I really need to pay attention to?
I might,
Matty, we'll start with you. Go on.
Yeah, I'll start with mine, because mine's probably pretty brief. I mean, Jigs can certainly really assist with giving us some great areas to consider. For me, it was probably 2015, 16. I had an employee come up to me and say, Matty, invest in Bitcoin. And I said, okay. I remember I wrote out, I was going to invest $5,000, which at the time, I don't recall how many Bitcoin would have got me. It was either 1 or 2 or something around that mark. And I set up the account. I needed to hold a piece of paper with my name written on it from an ID verification. And for some reason, my account got rejected. And the boys still today in the office give me crap about that, because it was like someone didn't trust me. So it was a phenomenal experience that, on reflection, I was open-minded enough to listen to Bitcoin. But at that point, when it rejected, I sort of thought to myself, well, this is not right for me. I can't be bothered. So I let that go. And it was, again, the opportunity. You have to be ready to listen. You have to be ready for the opportunity. And that's where the first bit of content was through Jigsy, who just opened my mind to think about let's take Bitcoin aside for the moment. Why is Bitcoin important, and how has it got us to today? I think that is where it started for me, was understanding, you talk about the macro and the microeconomic, sort of understanding global and local politics as well, understanding the banking system, all these things which at a, if you were to, at a high level, are quite overwhelming to think about. They really are. But Jigsy broke it down with facts. Facts were historical facts, both past and present and recent. And once you sort of go down that path, or once I went down that path and started to put the pieces of the puzzles together, and there are many pieces, and this is without Bitcoin, right? It led to where we are today. And that is that, for me, the banking system is a system which controls our day-to-day movements. I mean, we've got to move away from a cashless society. We're wanting passports. I'll touch a little bit on politics here, but I won't go into preferences. But everyone wants to see our movements. We've got we're followed on our phones. I swear we've listened to our phones. We're tracked so heavily. Our freedom is being taken away from us daily without us recognizing. There were some laws passed recently where, quote unquote, law enforcement can gain access to our data without needing a warrant. Through
your phone.
Am I correct in saying that, Jigs?
Yeah, through your phone.
I think it's in South Australia, isn't it, Matty?
Yeah.
Specifically, like they can access your social media profiles and other online digital accounts without you saying no.
I think there's a knock on the door. It might be one of the coppers.
Yeah, you're being shut down, guys. Come on.
Yeah, sorry, boys. But the reality is the nature of finance. It's like Jigsy touched on at school. If you're a bully and you want to stay in control and pick on the weak, it's quite easy to manipulate an outcome. But if you have someone that speaks,
and you do it through fear. That's how you do it.
Yeah. But if you have someone that speaks up for themselves, or a group of people that challenge in a way that is moral, ethical, then it's really hard to fight that with bullying tactics and fear tactics, because it is what it is. And so my own journey was getting rid of the riffraff. Identifying, in my opinion, who the bullies are, and identifying what Bitcoin is. And I think you touched on it earlier, Jake and Jigsy. It's a true gift to humanity, and it is about giving it back, control back to the people. And that's the journey that I went on through the information that Jigsy gave me to start with. It's been a fascinating year for me.
And that macro picture is so important, isn't it? In terms of, like, you suddenly think, oh, maybe I do actually have a problem. All good entrepreneurship stems from that. What the problem is, who's got it, how acute is that problem, how can we solve it? And so for me, I, as I mentioned before, inherited money. And what do you do with it? Well, why don't you just keep it in the bank? Just keep it there. Well, you can't, because if you did for 10 years, the purchasing power of that cash has just disappeared.
It's diminishing. It's a melting ice cube.
It's rampant, as Michael Saylor calls it. It's a melting ice block. So I one of the questions I just asked, obviously, was about what content that really spiked your interest. And for me, it was a conversation between Raoul and Michael Saylor in October of last year. And he spoke about, first of all, his background, US Air Force. He's a rocket scientist, essentially. Not too dissimilar to yourself, Matty.
I've got him covered.
Ended up in the setting up his own company, and he's the longest standing founder CEO of a stock listed company in the States, and he had $500 million worth of cash on his balance sheet that his company has generated. And as he describes, it's like a melting ice block. The value that can actually purchase on an annual basis is dropping by whatever the rate of inflation actually is. And he quite rightly points out that the assets you really want to buy, houses, genuinely good stocks, anything that anyone actually wants, is not in the CPI. So the official inflation statistics are complete and utter garbage. And on top of that, you're like, what do I do with this cash? And saving has been obliterated by modern monetary theory. So there I was, a 23-year-old, and I could have put my money in the bank, but what do you get? 0.4% interest on your cash. And not only that, it's losing value every year. So you have to invest. And so saving and investing has become synonymous with each other. And we're taught that they're normal. It's totally normal to invest, but investing is hard. You take risk with your capital, and sometimes you can't get it back, or you can't sell it, or regulations change, or just something goes wrong, and then your cash is gone. And so for me, it was that was my problem point. And then listening to Michael Saylor talk about this, and he went and bought $450 million worth of Bitcoin in the summer of last year, or winter in Australia, without anyone knowing about it, at roughly 10 grand a coin or whatever it was. And that for me was just one of those moments where I'd seen, I had the whole issue with buying that stupid car and, going on holiday. And suddenly I'm like, hang on, I've been interested in wealth preservation since I was 20 years old when my dad died. And I happen to have been connected to this asset class for the last 5 years, but I hadn't truly investigated what it actually meant. And then I saw someone who I respected purely from his position in life as someone who was clearly an entrepreneur, incredibly well educated, and was talking about it in a way that was like, how do I preserve this company 100 years from now? I buy Bitcoin. And you go, whoa, okay, this is insane. He's got accountants, lawyers, he's stock listed. I mean, everyone that could tell you that you can't do that will be in that list of people, and he still did it. That's pretty cool. Where does this all go from here? And that's what, really inspired my last year's worth of research. Jigsy, was there any particular moment for yourself in terms of, it's Steve Courtney you've mentioned already as someone that came across that helped you understand what was going on. Was there?
So I've never been interested in history in that, but, I understand cycles. We all understand cycles through weather, winter, summer, all the good gear. But listening to Mark Moss go back in history and how these cycles repeat, whether it's a 80-year cycle or a 250-year cycle or anything like that just repeats, and it goes through the lifetime of someone. I think that's why through the Holocaust that people have really talked about it and want the future generations to know about it so it doesn't happen again, because it potentially could happen again, something similar, because a whole generation will forget it. A whole 80-year cycle will live it, forget it, and the next 80-year cycle wouldn't have learned from it, and it will repeat. And it may not rhyme, it may not repeat the same as that, but it will rhyme like that in a different way. And so at the moment, Mark Moss, who is also one of my role models, he's my main, I subscribe to his newsletter. He does all my research for me through the traditional market of what to invest in, but he is huge on Bitcoin, and I listen to a lot of his content. Another one would probably be, who else would there be? Raoul is fantastic. He's a macro guy. I've never been a macro person. I've always just thought tomorrow, next week, and that's it. Now with Bitcoin, it's taught me to think generational. I'm not thinking about what am I going to do for retirement. I'm thinking about how I'm preserving my wealth for my grandkids' kids, like my great-grandchildren. That's how far I'm preparing ahead. And I might not benefit the most from what Bitcoin does in my lifetime, but I sure as hell know that they will in their lifetime. And I'm just putting the building blocks and the foundations in now for them, because this is just an unbelievable opportunity and a massive generational wealth that's going to take place.
It's a big change, isn't it?
It's huge.
So, Matty, did you have any more comments?
No, I think the one thing that Jigs touched on there is in relation to the likes of the Raoul, the yourself, Jake, with Mike Saylor, again, Jigs with Mark Moss. There are people before us that have delved into this space much deeper than what I have. There's also people out there that claim to know or have insight to information that is probably infactual. And I guess the medium that we're potentially trying to present here is just education, education about our experiences, education about some people that have assisted us heavily through our journeys, and then essentially education on doing research. It's like anything in life. Unless you do your own research and truly understand why. You mentioned that, Jake, earlier about the entrepreneur, about finding out what's the reason for this, or what's behind this, and why am I going to make this decision, is sort of how I run my day-to-day operations. But please, it's so paramount that what Jigsy touched on about the generational opportunity, this, in my opinion, is very real. And there's people, I'm sure, sitting and listening to this and potentially saying, well, I don't have the money. I don't have the money to invest. I don't have the wealth of inheritance from Jake. I don't have Jigs. There'll be people, I'm sure Jigs have said, oh, Jigs is lucky, right? I've heard the same myself in my own business. Oh, Matt, you're lucky. Yeah, right. Luck's created through opportunity, and that opportunity is created from doing your research and acting on your own decisions. And I encourage anybody, whether it's a small amount, mid amount, or large amount, if you believe in this after you do your own research, the journey is there to be taken. And it's one very, very exciting journey. 2%, or roughly 2% of the global population. Holy crap. What are we in?
Holy crap.
Yeah.
There's a saying I've heard banded around, which is, there's two things that Bitcoiners have in common. Everyone thinks they're late, and they never have enough Bitcoin.
Well, that's where Stephen Courtney comes in, where you can speed that little process up.
Well, correct, and that's
can I be the mediator of that? Can I be the mediator of that debate at some stage as well?
Definitely.
So everyone's got their different risk profile. Everyone's got their, it's all based on your personality. I mean, going back to people who do their research, and then what I've seen, the guys that don't believe, like your Peter Schiffs and that, and don't believe that this is happening. I've never seen a female say it, and it comes down to, he can't swallow his pride. He can't keep his ego in check, and just accept that he's got it wrong. He's dug his hole so deep that he's too embarrassed to put his ego in check. We all thought it was a scam, but we all had we took the time to put that ego in check and actually give it a chance and understand it. I mean, I have my 7 close friends, and all of them think that I'm a joke. And I mean, if you think a joke is, I was bankrupt, I had no understanding of finance or anything, and 2 years ago, or 600 days ago, I took took over control of my self-managed super fund, or my 401k as they call it in America, and started self-managing it. And I've grown that by 700% in 600 days. That's not a joke. Like,
Congratulations.
That's legit. And then, I've done in my personal side, we celebrated today that on Father's Day and starting this podcast, that I've just cracked 1,000%. Like, that is unbelievable. I came into this hoping to just double my money.
It's unbelievable.
My mum said to me when I was a kid, she's like, the best way to double your money is fold it and put it in your pocket. I disagree.
Yeah.
You can buy Bitcoin. And you know what? My mum has bought Bitcoin. All my life I tried to impress my dad. I could never impress him because I was doing it wrong. I was doing what he wanted me to do. Now I'm doing what I want to do. And it's flipped the table. It's flipped the table. I manage my dad's money, and I'm helping him grow his retirement fund. And so I have full confidence in what I've been taught from Stephen Courtney, and he's taught me how to fish. And if I can share that with other people that have thought that they were the black duck and want to become a swan, I'm happy to help. I mean, that's what we that's why we're doing this. We want to help people.
I think what's really fascinating about, listening to tonight's discussion is really, there's been three things that I've sort of taken away from this. Is one, Bitcoin to all of us has been a scam. We've all in our lives come across some real hardship and have faced the fear of failure, which is in turn self-doubt. And then there's been Bitcoin that has come to us through our own research that is the light, and those three things I take away from tonight. And I think for myself, if I summarize it in that aspect, it really is that powerful. It can truly touch everybody from all walks of life. We've all had different walks of life. And that's why, again, I don't choose the word lightly. Satoshi, do your research. He's given the gift to humanity. He really has. Also, I'd like to think we're all a pretty good judge of character, the three of us. And we didn't come in investing in Bitcoin in the beginning. We came in and we started looking at people that were the content, your Mark Mosses and Michael Saylors. I mean, Alex Mashinsky has to get a big mention because we've invested in these people that have been through this industry or through different walks of life, and we're learning from them and then doing our own journeys from their journeys. So these are the people that, like going back to the gambling, we'd go to the tracks and we just bet on a horse. Like we just look at the horse's name and bet on a horse. What you should be betting on is you should be betting on the person. So you bet on the trainer. You look at the trainer, and that's why you bet on the horse. Bitcoin is the fastest horse here, and we are betting on the people that are behind it, the people that have made it, the people that have done the research, and why they've done it. That's what we're betting on.
To slightly reframe what you're saying.
Please do.
Just you're onto something. This is a fundamental point to this discussion, which is we're actually not investing in people at all. We are investing in a software protocol, and it is just math. That's it. So when you're buying startup equity, or you're buying an equity on a stock market, or some government debt, or you name it, you are actually buying, more often than not, a percentage of a team of humans who have a business plan and an opinion on the market, and are farming a trend of some form for margin, or making some kind of a product, or whatever they might be doing. You are buying a very human entity, so to speak. Whereas Bitcoin is a new monetary system. It's a new type of money. The phrase "a bearer asset."
Well, you're trusting those people to do the right thing for your money that you've invested.
Correct. So you're leveraging other people's research, who are extremely smart and very well researched, and they've openly spread their research. You just go on YouTube. You can read it. You can watch it. You can, pull it all together and go.
There's books. Bitcoin Standard is an unbelievable book.
But the big difference is you're not, it's not someone who's like an Amazon analyst going, guys, now's a great time to buy Amazon. You're actually buying money that just sits in a hardware wallet, or with Celsius earning yield, or wherever you may choose to keep your digital asset. But so you can leverage other people's research, which is incredibly valuable, but you're buying something that's actually quite difficult to understand on the surface, and is why people call it a scam. But anyway, I totally follow what you're saying, but I think it's quite an important difference there.
Yeah, of course.
Where Jigs is coming from, I won't speak for Jigs, but the understanding, and I think you touched on as well, Jake, when you see Michael Saylor, an entrepreneur, invest $450 million into Bitcoin, it tells you a story. and he has those traditional people behind him. When you hear the likes of a Raoul, who's big in macro, speak about Bitcoin, you respect his opinion. And this is again what I touched on earlier: is there is some jargon out there, but if you follow yourself with good people and again make your own decisions based off of knowing that Bitcoin is a software protocol, and then understanding the scarcity, understanding the its deflationary nature. We haven't even touched on the technicalities of it tonight, and that will be for further episodes. But once you delve into that and sort of put all those pieces of puzzles together, it is just so overwhelmingly positive, in my opinion, as to why every kid hopefully has a piece of Bitcoin in their little savings.
Can you imagine? I love the idea of being a godparent that gives people Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Instead of giving them a $5 and going, here you go, kid, go and have a good time. You give them £5 worth of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
By the time they're 18, they can access, and it's like, it'll buy them a house. I mean, it'll be the most insane gift anyone could ever give any child.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I'd like to touch on, actually, and I'm sure we'll be wrapping up shortly for tonight's session. But the reality is that there are still assets in life that people will ask us the question or be curious about, and we can touch on that at further stages. Like, Bitcoin, what does that mean about how I buy my groceries, or how I buy my house, or, I've got a house, I want to buy it. What do I do? There is so many topics, broadly speaking, about people's day-to-day lives and the power of how Bitcoin plays in all of those. I think we can help explain our opinions on those as well. I think it's fascinating, and it's such an exciting path and journey that all of us have been on, and I hope everyone that listens to this gets as excited.
Yeah, I'd just touch on what you just said earlier. The biggest hurdle for me was listening to my peers and them saying I'm an idiot for even looking at this. But what I learned, and we have this opportunity where you can surround yourself with such great content of smart people that have done the research, as opposed to just trusting your friend that hasn't done the research and saying it's a scam. It's, the saying, your net worth is your network. And I've completely changed my network to these people, like your Saylors and that around me, and guys like you around me. That has really increased my net worth. And I think that's really important, that people understand that that's one thing you do have control of, is the information you get, and not just listening to the first bit of information you get, and why doing your research is so important.
And it's like you just touched on that. I mean, that just hits the nail on the head. Jake rightfully gave an explanation of what Bitcoin actually is. Without having people around you that you can discuss, that are educated, and can say, Bitcoin in its truest element is math. It's a software protocol and it's math. You take whatever you want, explain it how you want. That's what it is. How it's got here today, there's reasons for that. But the broader understanding of what it is, and what you said, Jigs, is having people around you that are educated, that you can follow good content. And then the more that you delve into it, the more that you read. The Bitcoin standard. Has a fiat standard been published yet? I think it's close, very close.
It has been, yeah.
It has,
I haven't read it though.
I've heard it's a very good read. But again, educating yourself in all facets of the financial system is paramount to coming to a conclusion of why Bitcoin is so important.
That's what's so crazy though. So, for example, I went to a business school. I've worked in business since, my dad drove me past the pub car park being like, how do we fill it up? Never did I ever ask the question in a serious way, what is money? What the fuck is it? Where did it come from? What's it all about? Why do we need it? And I was taught how to potentially make profit, but that's very different to understanding what money is. And especially in comparison to how the current world functions, where effectively everyone has to use a type of money, but a very small portion of the people using it sit right next to the guys that print more of it, and they just pocket it and buy the shit they want and most people don't benefit in the slightest from that.
Well,
And it's an insanely unfair system.
It is.
And you're like, whoa,
your parents.
This is insane.
Your
What's
parents
going
used
on?
to say to you as a kid, "Money doesn't grow on trees." Well, I tell you what, it does now.
It does for some people.
It
Yeah.
does. It just grows. It just grows on trees.
Wait, Jigs, is that a printer? Is that a printer over your shoulder, mate?
Yeah, in the booze cupboard.